Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you my review of the 26th mystery in the Nancy Drew series, Nancy Drew Tomb of the Lost Queen. As usual, my reviews are based on 5 separate categories. Those categories are plot, characters, setting and design, entertainment and gameplay value, and music and vibe. Each of those categories is scored on a scale of 1 to 10 for a final possible score out of 50, and then I assign each game a letter grade as well. Just a brief warning before we begin, this review may contain some mild plot spoilers. I won't be spoiling any major events that might happen in the game, but it might be more spoilers related to things you might see in the promotional materials for the games, such as information about the characters and things that you might see or do within the game. So without further ado, let's get started discussing the plot of Tomb of the Lost Queen. So for this mystery, Nancy was kind of referred to an archaeologist by somebody that she worked for in one of her previous cases, actually all the way back to Secret of the Scarlet Hand. So this is another case that's based on archaeology and that sort of history. And Nancy is basically sent to Egypt and joins an archaeological team just to help them out with the dig, with the reason being that, hey, she's good at solving mysteries, so she'd probably make a pretty good archaeologist, solving the mysteries of the deep past, a pretty good Egyptologist. So that's the reason that Nancy is there, and naturally tombs and Egypt and mummies always kind of bring up mysterious kind of ideas, things like curses, just finding mummies, solving puzzles, figuring out how to get through the tombs. So that's really the mystery that Nancy is trying to solve, and the dig that she is working on is really trying to solve the mystery of, is this Queen Nefertari's tomb? She's considered the lost queen. They found a tomb that was supposedly Nefertari's many years prior, but they never actually found her body. They just found her kneecaps, so now they think that this might be the actual tomb. And Nancy's job is to kind of try to prove that it is Nefertari's tomb, see if she can make that work, and also to figure out who attacked John Boyle, who is the archaeologist that Nancy was really, or the Egyptologist that Nancy was really working with on this dig, because during a sandstorm, we found out at the very beginning of the mystery that John was attacked. He got hit on the head by someone, clobbered over the head by something, and had to go to the hospital. So Nancy is also kind of trying to solve the mystery of what might be going on there. Now, if that all sounds a little convoluted, it's because it kind of is. There really is a lot going on with this plot. It's not as simple as, hey, we're in Egypt trying to solve this mystery about the tomb. There's also kind of some drama going on with what happened to John. There's lots of mysterious accidents. There's talk about the black market. There's talk about curses. There's talk about staging sites. There's so many different things. There's talk about aliens, and are aliens real? And the Anunnaki. There's a lot of different threads that aren't necessarily tied together very nicely by the end of the mystery. Some of them work okay, and some of them come together all right, but rather than getting lots of tight knots by the end of the game where all of these little subplots that we wished were fulfilled, we end up really not getting a very fulfilling ending in that way. It leaves a lot to the imagination. It leaves a lot up to the detective at the end, how you want to think about something, how something happened or not. I'm leaving this deliberately vague to avoid any spoilers, but if you have played this game, hopefully you know what I mean. There's just a lot going on, and it gets very messy. There's also a lot of parts of it that feel just a little bit too convenient. It's almost like, of course that were to happen, or things are planted in a certain way where it's like, oh, of course, well, now I know exactly what's going on. And again, that's very, very vague, but it doesn't make for a great mystery when things feel just a little bit too contrived. Overall, I don't think the plot of this mystery is bad. I think there are definitely things it could improve on. I do really appreciate the idea of going to Egypt, solving the mystery of a tomb, trying to figure out who's in the tomb, and honestly, if they have really just focused on that aspect of the mystery, it probably would have been a lot stronger, but because it goes in so many different directions, and those directions really are not fulfilling, I have to give Tomb of the Lost Queen a 7 for plot. Next, let's move on to characters. So there are 4 physical characters that we see in this game. We have Abdullah Bakum, who is a very world-renowned Egyptologist, and he's extremely full of himself. We have Lily Crew, who is part of Abdullah's Egyptology team. She's a PhD student from Kingston University, and she's very nervous about curses, which makes it seem kind of interesting that she chose this career path. We have Jamila Eldine, who is a local Egyptian, and she really thinks that aliens built the pyramids and is a firm believer in the Anunnaki. So she's there. And then we have Dylan Carter, who is a random tour guide who kind of shows up and is just kind of the token handsome guy, I guess. And he's there to be kind of charismatic and funny, but otherwise he's a tour guide. We're never really positive why Dylan is there. We do have a couple phone friends. One of them is very familiar to people who have played many other games in the Nancy Drew series, the venerable Professor Hotchkiss, who has returned from games like Treasure in the Royal Tower and Legend of the Crystal Skull. She's back as a phone friend in this game, and then we do also talk to John Boyle, the Egyptologist that Nancy was originally working with, who got hurt at the very beginning of the game, so we don't actually see him physically throughout the majority of the game. So those are all of our characters. For the most part, I do enjoy the characters. I think they are pretty funny. I think some of them are very interesting. I actually really enjoy interacting with Abdullah because he has some really cool stories that he tells, and I actually feel like he's a bit more of a real person. He feels a little bit more developed. Lily feels reasonably developed as well. Her fear of the curses is really all that we get of her. Honestly, that's kind of the main thing, but we get a little bit of history from her as well, so she feels a little bit more real. One of the issues that I have with this game is that Jamila and Dylan show up about, I don't know, a third of the way through the mystery, and it's never really explained how they got there and why they got there. We get a reason for why Jamila decided to come to the site. We never really get a reason why Dylan actually came to the site. He lies to us, and we're never really sure when he's telling the truth, and a couple of the theories that we have are never really confirmed. So it kind of makes me wonder, why was he actually even there? Was there a reason for him to be there as a character? Is it just because he's handsome and they thought that it would be fun to have a handsome guy for fans to fawn over when they're playing the game because he has a British accent and is a good-looking guy? Like, I'm not really sure what his point is beyond that. And the fact that some of the characters feel that way, they feel very random and they feel a little bit forced. Jamila is another example of it. When I said that the plot felt a little bit too convenient or a little bit too contrived, that's kind of, she's one of the characters, and her story and why she is there, which you discover more throughout the mystery, goes along with that problem that I have. It just feels a little bit too contrived. It doesn't feel supernatural. So it's interesting. I like interacting with the characters. I think they're fun, but I don't think their reason for existence is developed enough. And I don't think that we get to know enough about at least half of the characters, 2 out of the 4, to really understand why they are there. Again, kind of a vague problem, but it's definitely something that permeates the game. So overall, I give characters an 8 out of 10. Next, let's move on to setting and design. So as I mentioned, this game takes place in Egypt, and when I look at setting and design, I want to feel like I am in that setting. And did I feel like I was in Egypt when I was playing this game? Certainly. I mean, we're in a desert, so there's tons of sand everywhere. We're in the very middle of the desert too, so there's really nothing else that we can see besides our camp and then the tomb. The tomb is absolutely stunning, and I think they did an amazing job with the tomb. We start off only being able to explore a certain number of corridors, and then we steadily find more secret passageways or different routes through the tomb, and steadily find more and more things, which makes the setting feel very dynamic and very alive. It's very fun being able to explore the tomb in that way and getting to see all of those different things. So I really enjoy the tomb, and it's just designed very beautifully. The colors are super vibrant. It looks really natural. They did a really nice job making it feel beautiful and also kind of disheveled because it is a tomb. It's been underground and hidden for a very, very long time. And they did a nice job setting things up where there's archaeology tools everywhere. And when you are above ground in the archaeology tents or the Egyptology tents, I'm using Egyptology and archaeology kind of interchangeably here. I apologize if that's not correct. But when you look in those tents, it feels very natural. There's little cots for each of the people that are working there. There's a little tent where you can kind of go through artifacts and dust them off and sort out amulets and try to put things together. It feels very natural. I think the setting and the design is really a high point in this mystery. The one issue I have with the setting, and the one reason I can't give it a 10 out of 10, is because when this game ends, we go from having this beautiful, fully developed three-dimensional design to ending with a bird's eye view puzzle that feels, first of all, completely unrealistic and random. It's like, where did that come from and how does that work? Where on earth in the tomb is this and how is this technology working? But it also pulls you totally out of the setting when they do that. This is the same kind of thing that we see in Creature of Kapu Cave at the end puzzle, where you're trying to get away from the culprit, and it just pulls you completely out of the moment. And it's really frustrating that they did that with the very final moment of the game. That would have been a great opportunity to find something even more exciting in the setting and have that be more of a reveal rather than a goofy escape. Or maybe you have to find a faster way out of the maze of the tomb before the culprit. Anything like that would have been a lot better than this bird's eye view, two-dimensional, awkward puzzle that doesn't even seem possible in the first place. So, while I really appreciate most parts of the setting and design, I have to give it a 9 out of 10. Next, we move on to entertainment and gameplay value, which considers how fun the game is to play and how fun it is to replay. Now, I will say first of all that I really enjoy playing this game. I think it's a very fun one. It's, however, very puzzle dense. There are tons of puzzles. For the most part, I am okay with it because we are in a tomb, and the tomb is meant to be a labyrinth of puzzles. It's supposed to be very difficult to get into certain chambers, to find the mummies, to find certain artifacts. It's supposed to be hard. The ancient Egyptians designed it that way. They didn't want just anyone to walk in and take their precious mummies and then walk right out. They wanted it to be really difficult. So the fact that there are a ton of puzzles, I think makes sense. Normally, it doesn't work really well in a mystery, but because this is a tomb, I think it works better than it does in some other cases. However, it does become a lot. It's a lot of jigsaw puzzles, it's a lot of slider puzzles, it's a lot of codes that you have to decode over and over again. It can get a little bit repetitive. I think a lot of the puzzles are very enjoyable, but there's also not a lot of guidance with many of the puzzles. You're kind of left to your own devices, especially if you're playing on Senior Detective, and there's no real way that you can ask for hints. So it's not something where you can... If you're playing it on Junior Detective, I mean, you obviously are going to get a lot more hints, but I feel like in Senior Detective, or in earlier games, for example, you could call the Hardy Boys, you could call Ned, and they would give you a little hint about the puzzle. Things like that, I think, are a lot more valuable than having it on Junior Detective, where it basically solves the puzzles for you if you click on the hint buttons long enough, versus Senior Detective, where you get almost no guidance whatsoever. It's definitely... It's hard, there's no middle ground between those two, and I wish there was, because it's either you get all of the help or you get none of the help. It would be nice to just get a little bit of the help, especially in a game that has so many very difficult puzzles. This game is also another very long one, and it can be very difficult. So it's kind of in the same realm as Shadow at the Water's Edge. It can be very fun, but the puzzles can also really drag it down and make it take a very long time. It also has a very dynamic environment, so things change, which means you might need something that you cannot find and you don't realize, oh, it appeared in this place that I already looked a long time ago. It can just be complicated, which during your first playthrough can really take away some of the fun of it. And even on replays, there was one time during my walkthrough actually that I finally figured out a puzzle on my own. And I played this game at least 10 times before, 10, 12, probably even 20 times before. And I just now figured out the actual logic behind one of the puzzles. So it's something that I feel like that should be a little bit easier. There should be more of a hint there. So overall, I give entertainment and gameplay value a 7 out of 10. Finally, we move on to music and vibe, which considers the music and the game and how the overall atmosphere of the game is conveyed. Now, this is an area where I think the game really excels. The music definitely has instruments that are more classic to that area of Egypt. So it definitely sounds very mysterious. We get those local instruments playing, or at least those local sounds, and what you would expect when you have a game taking place in Egypt. So I love all of that. I think the music is awesome. The overall vibe, though, I think is where this game really succeeds, because when you are moving throughout the tomb, or when you're sitting for a long time trying to solve a puzzle, you can hear stones falling or crumbling in the background. You can hear what sounds like footsteps. So no matter where you are, even if you're just standing there trying to solve a puzzle, you can hear ambient sounds in the environment. And it's kind of creepy because you wonder, oh my gosh, is somebody sneaking up on me? Oh my gosh, is it the mummy? Is it the curse? And the curse aspect of the game is really heavily conveyed. So we get it from all sorts of different sources. We get it from Bess when we call her. We get it from Lily. We get it from Dylan. We get it from Abdullah. We get it from all of the characters, really, in some form. And then you have Nancy kind of worrying about the curse as well, decoding things that seem to suggest a curse. So they really hit you with that curse vibe. So even though there's not any scare factor in this game, there's always kind of that subtle unease. And I really like that in a game, especially a mystery game. I feel like I need to be a little uneasy to really enjoy the vibe. So I think this game deserves a solid 10 out of 10 in the category of music and vibe. So if we total up our scores, we have a 7 for plot, 8 for characters, 9 for setting and design, 7 for entertainment and gameplay value, and 10 for music and vibe, which gives us a total score of 41 out of 50 and a final grade of a B. Now, would I recommend that you play this game? Definitely. I think this is a fun one. This is one of the more middling games for me. It's by no means perfect, but it is actually really fun. And if you're willing to push through all of the really hard puzzles, it feels like a very rewarding game. Now, if you're not someone that enjoys long, difficult, puzzle-dense games, this game might not be for you. This might be one that you want to wait on. But I think getting through all of those puzzles is really exciting. So maybe if puzzles aren't necessarily your thing, you could play this game on Junior Detective and really work through it that way, get a little more confident, and then maybe work your way up to Senior Detective. It could be one of those games that you just do it on the easier setting to make it a little bit more fun for you. But I think, the puzzles aside, we've got a really awesome plot. We've got some interesting characters. Well, not an awesome plot, but we got a pretty fun plot. It's pretty cool. It's neat that Nancy's in Egypt. It's just a place that we've wanted Nancy to go for a long time. Egypt just seems like a great place for a mystery. So it's a really neat mystery in its own right, and I think it does have some pretty cool things to offer. Thank you so much for listening to this review, fellow detectives. I do hope that you enjoyed it. Please feel free to like and comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Please feel free to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more Nancy Drew content. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.